having a blank. I need my post-workout meal. Trying to think. Hold up.
Girl, are you? Do
You
you
going
not?
hypo on us?
Are you on
I might go
hypo?
hypo. I might go hypo.
I hate you both chilling in tank tops. Meanwhile, I'm like,
Bro, this was the first day in 4 days I was able to walk outside for my morning walk. I was ecstatic.
it's cold as fuck.
Ecstatic.
What's the weather like with you?
It's 50 degrees.
Oh, okay. So that's
Yeah.
nice. Actually, so Josh just told me yesterday, I can't think of the exact name of where his mom and sister are currently, but they're moving to Charleston. So
Nice.
likely we'll be visiting.
I would love that. I mean, you should visit anyway, not because of your future in-laws, because of me.
I figured I'd just visit everybody,
Yeah.
but
Very true, true. Yeah, but you want to stay with me though.
yes, for sure.
But you know, like where? Like Somerville, Goose Creek, Mount Pleasant.
Something I want to say something that began with an F.
An F.
Fisherman. So I'll circle back.
I'm gonna pull up maps just so I can see where is Finder. Where are maps?
Are you feeling refreshed today, Meg? I saw you got some sleep.
Yeah. I
Folly
mean,
Beach?
Maybe.
that sounds pretty.
It ain't. I think it's trash. I could be wrong though. I
Sounds
could
right.
be wrong. But I always thought Folly Beach was trash. Is Folly Beach trash? It's the party beach.
Oh no. I mean
That doesn't make sense for them to move there.
yeah. I don't know. I'll find out. He's not here right now.
Move my desk down real quick. Sorry.
How's everybody's day going?
Good. I got to train with my friend Michaela, which is also Meg's athlete. So that was a lot of fun to
Cool.
train with her.
You kick her ass.
I kicked her hams.
Okay. That's good.
Yeah.
That's good enough.
Good enough. Good enough. Yeah. Good enough. So yeah, no, I had a really good workout too. So that was nice.
How are you feeling? I know you were in PT. You never really mentioned for what though.
You talking to me? PT?
Yeah.
Yeah.
My hamstring, I tore it like 3 years ago, and I like have a history of like issues with my left side because I broke my foot in like the seventh grade. And so there's just like nerves that didn't really heal properly. So my hamstring is, it's really hard to dissociate my hamstring from my foot, which sounds kind of screwed up. But it's something that I'm kind of working through so that way I have better hamstring activation and better hamstring growth. But it's going really well. And obviously, I'm working through like glute issues, hip impingement issues. So it's actually going really, really well. I'm really
Good.
happy that I can do a lunge now on my left side and actually sit on my glute and not have that restriction. So I'm really, really happy.
Good.
Hmm.
Honestly, I have a very pretty similar. I broke my ankle
Hmm.
and stress tear through my hamstring,
Yep.
and I have like my foot concaves in.
Yep.
So up that entire leg, there's less glute engagement
Yep.
and impingement in my lower back. So
Twins.
literally,
I can send you my rehab if you want.
honestly, yeah.
I love it. I love it. How's it? Besides me, how's everyone else's day?
Good.
Busy.
Busy, but good.
Yeah, Meg, you're traveling soon, right?
I leave Thursday after I train. I'm going to train in the morning and then I'm going to head to Miami to be with the Scooby crew for the Hybrid Health Summit.
Nice. Does he pay
Fun.
for everything when you go places?
Uh, so I believe I paid for my room. I don't know. Maybe not. I don't know. I think if you have to fly, he doesn't pay for that. But obviously, I'm driving with Chip, so it doesn't matter. But yeah, so I'll be going there. I've come back. I think it's until like 2 p.m. on Sunday, but I think it's like a 4.5 hour drive. I'm just gonna like head out in the morning, come back to Tampa, just so I can like before
Yeah.
Monday, you know. I love traveling. Ash, I know you don't, but I love it. But like I do like to come back, have like a chill time, like really collect my thoughts.
Mhm.
Yeah, but I'm excited because we have a bunch of new coaches and some I haven't met yet, and yeah, I'm excited.
Cool. What's
Yeah.
the topic? Do you know? Is there like a core theme, or is it just kind of like random speakers?
There's a ton of different speakers. So like obviously it's big into like the functional space, but then there's also like business mentor people and like motivational speakers that come. So it's really good. It's a
Nice.
mix of shit.
Have
So
you ever been to any of the PECs?
no. Wait,
Okay.
yes. I went to one in Tampa when I lived in Daytona.
I was gonna say, that
So
sounds similar to like what I went to when I went
yeah,
to
yeah,
Texas.
it's similar to that. And then I'm going to Nashville in about 2 weeks for I don't really know what it is. It's like a charity event at Jeff Black's gym, but they have a
Nice.
bunch of speakers as well. So I'm excited.
Nice.
Nice.
Yeah.
More meeting people and
Yeah,
communicating
networking
and
and
Networking.
networking.
Nice.
It'll be fun.
mhm.
Awesome. I love it. Meg, do you want to introduce our topic? Because I know you and I were like texting the other day about like
Yeah.
this topic of ours.
Yeah, so I guess the topic is about soft coaching. And
Oh,
since we're all female coaches in this space, I think we get like the brunt of it, we're looked at as, oh, we need to be empathetic and soft on our athletes and we have to be understanding. And of course, there's like a time and place for that.
Mhm.
But I think if you're coming to a coach to drastically overhaul your life and change something, it's gonna get uncomfortable and you should be paying someone who's gonna push you, not be like militant and like an asshole to you.
Mhm.
But sometimes that's needed, to be honest, to like tell it to you straight. And Ash and I were just talking about how some athletes, some clients take it as like us being harsh or bitchy, or if we post something on Instagram in a way, like we get like talked down, like we're assholes pretty much. But really, we're just trying to be a coach. So
Mhm. I
that
think it's
is,
Yeah, I think that was really well said. I think it's difficult when it comes to especially like the dynamic of male versus female coaches, right? Like I know Meg and I were talking about like your football coach isn't gonna like,
Mhm.
like be super soft. Like there's a time and a place to be empathetic, but empathy can't replace progression. So the issue that I have is like women, we kind of feel like we can't talk about certain topics or we can't express unpopular opinions because boom, we're labeled as a bitch. But it's true that people have biases. It's just women usually aren't seen as authoritative figures because usually we have two faults sometimes when we have our messages. We make things too personal and we express things too emotionally. And sometimes when you have that, those dynamics, it kind of takes away from like, well, who the fuck cares about what you think type of mentality. So these are generalizations, of course, but men do very, very similar things. But essentially, when they make like, statements that are like unpopular opinions that are kind of like controversial, usually they're calm. They make a good solid argument and they don't make things more personal toward them. It's just kind of like a generality. And they usually leave it with like an empowerment. And like the post that comes to mind was Jordan Hutchinson. I think I butchered his name. But the big bodybuilder guy where he was like bodybuilding's getting soft. But like
Mm.
he didn't say F you guys, screw you guys are weak little bitches. Like he was like, guys, this is a very extreme sport. He's like, I want like top tier caliber athletes to like bring their best on stage. Like we should be doing things this way, whatever. Like he it wasn't about him and his emotions and his feelings toward bodybuilding. I think he referenced himself only a couple of times, but he was like, let's make bodybuilding what it should be. And it was very empowering, but like that was like the post that sticks in my mind. If like I were to make it and I would probably be very emotional about it and make it very personal, it would be labeled as, oh, Ash is being a bitch.
Ash is PMSing.
Ash is PMSing.
it's funny because Josh and I have had a lot of conversations about this because we both coach.
Mhm.
And I'll be home and we'll be both working, whatever, and I like either hear or see or something that he does, and I like turn and look, I'm like, the fuck I could ever say that? Because like a lot of the times I couldn't, because I think that the expectations as a female are definitely different than a male. And a lot of the times, men can get away with saying X, Y, and Z and
Mhm.
not be looked at different for it because they're a guy. There's no other explanation than they are a guy. And as a female, if you are overly direct or blunt, you are labeled as a bitch. You're correct.
Mhm.
And that is something I think for all three of us that by nature, or especially myself, I have to think about before I'm replying because of my upbringing. I did not have very emotional parents. I had all, different types of foreign gymnastics coaches. Like they didn't give a fuck. You fall, you get up, you do it again. And it was like, it wasn't an emotional, like anything ever.
Mhm.
So there's definitely has to be a happy medium, but at the same time, like it can't be overly coddling because as you're saying, you don't see the progression because then people get more than anything too comfortable.
Mhm. Can you please give
Yeah.
us an example of what, like something Josh has said where you're like, I wish I could say that.
He will straight out say to his clients, like, I know you're lying, that you went off your plan. Tell me that you didn't. Like I've verbatim heard him say things like that. Like,
Mhm.
and then the client admits to it. And I'm like, the fuck? He's like, no, I have this built out. I know how their body has responded, and this would have happened if they did X, Y, and Z. And he's
Mhm.
like, I will call them straight out on their bullshit.
Mhm.
I
I
think
think
the reason why he can do that though is because he said, I know you're lying.
Mhm.
He was very blunt about it, but he wasn't emotional about it. He wasn't like, hey, you're lying, you're a sack of shit. I hate you. It was, hey, I know you're lying, be honest with me. And because he's probably created some type of dynamic with that athlete, the athlete's like, yeah, shit, he's calling me out on my bullshit. Like, you're right. You're right. Sorry.
Yeah, it's always handled tactfully, but like he is so fucking direct, and I'm like, wish I could start over and do that.
Well, I think it also comes down to the relationship that you have, the rapport that you have with your athlete.
Mhm.
I'm very open and very also very direct with my athletes. I'll tell it to them straight. I'm not going to sugarcoat shit. Especially if I know what they have already overcome in their life, and
Mhm.
then they let one little obstacle really throw them off.
Yep.
Like, I won't name her name, but I have an athlete on my team. She's gone through chemo twice. She's gone through cancer twice. Like she is a fucking cancer survivor. She has kicked ass. And
Wow.
she was sick for the past 2 weeks and like her check-ins were so negative and so like, oh, I can't do this. I can't do this. I'm
Mhm.
like, what the fuck? You've already done it. You've kicked cancer's ass. Like, are you kidding me? Like, I will get emotional about it because I know where they can go. But I won't just be militant and like, oh, like I won't bash them for, falling through and like not doing things because I understand things happen. We're all human, but I'm going to be straight with them
Yeah.
because, you can't like the whole like participation trophy kind of culture, you can't just be so soft and mushy because how are you
Mhm.
supposed to progress? How are you supposed to get better if you're not going to push yourself?
Mhm.
So I think it does come down to like understanding what the athlete has gone through,
Mhm.
um, and knowing them on a little personal level. But also, I don't know, man. You just have to be honest. I feel like a lot of coaches hold back, a lot of female coaches because of this.
Mhm.
And I think it's probably, limiting their progress with their athletes for sure.
I would agree. I think it's also important to talk about like the different types of athletes you might work with
Mhm.
when it comes to functional health, gen pop, or contest prep, because of course, like, as a coach, I always use the phrase like you have different hats. Well, I have different coaching hats for different
Yeah.
types of subsets of populations because yes, the goal is progression. The goal is getting better. It is making sure that whatever their end goal is, we are making progress to said goal. But urgency should always be there. But it's like, well, what is realistic in like a functional health goal? What is realistic in a gen pop goal versus like you're wanting to wear a little itsy bitsy bikini and heels on stage, it's like, okay, we need to like put on our big girl pants and address this. And so it's good to show empathy. It's good to respect, the athlete and not like just like call them names or whatever, but be like, okay, hey, we didn't handle things good this week. Let's own it. Let's own up to it. I'm big on ownership. And I love when my athletes own their shit. And it's like, okay, you screwed up this week. Recognize why you screwed up, acknowledge it. Don't let it impact this upcoming week, but now look at the, surrounding circumstances as to why you screwed up. So therefore we can make a game plan so it doesn't happen again, and then lead them with a charge of, okay, hey, let's be a better athlete this week. Like that's usually how I handle some type of confrontation with an athlete, especially given, like Meg said, knowing their background versus like where have they come through, what were their struggles, what were their, kind of like hesitancies maybe with coaching even, and how can we turn those weaknesses into almost their strengths. Like that, being able to do that as a coach is like, I think one of the biggest tools in the toolbox, one of our assets when it comes to taking an athlete who's just okay and making them their very best.
Mhm. Yeah.
Okay. I think also to setting up some type of stepping stone structure is really helpful when it comes to trying to achieve long-term goals, because like
Mhm.
anyone, we want immediate results, and most of the big results we're trying to achieve take a significant amount of time. So I try to plan that out when I'm doing check-ins with athletes and want to like almost like bring them back into having what are we working towards
Mhm.
mentality. Give me a goal that you want to achieve within the next week, 3 weeks, 2 months, 1 year, like map it out, whatever the timeline may be. Because then that starts to bring them back to like, I can check this box. I can check this box. So like there is definitely a feeling of accomplishment too, while trying to compile to those larger goals.
Mhm.
Yeah, I agree. That's important. But also kind of what you were saying, Ash, something that I always ask on my consultation calls is, what is your previous coaching
Yes.
experience? And sometimes they'll say they have only worked with male coaches, because as much as we do have amazing female coaches in this industry, it is more male dominant still. I think more up and coming females, which is awesome. I love that. But they always lead with like, I want a female's, I don't know, like a female's touch or something.
Yeah.
Like I want that more empathetic side. And I be real with them on the phone. I'm like, yes, I'll be probably a little bit more understanding
Mhm.
in a sense, but that doesn't mean that I'm not gonna push you
Yeah.
when I know that you can do better.
Mhm.
But I do know that sometimes when I ask, like, give me examples of like when you didn't feel heard by your previous coach. And it was mainly like they honestly were like scolded by this coach for not hitting like their macros every single day perfectly to a T, or
Mhm.
they were like told, especially like competitors, like, oh, you're not cut out for this, like you can't do this, because they messed up once in a prep. It's like,
Mhm.
okay, you have to be a little bit more realistic. Like you have to literally put yourself in those athletes' shoes too. Um,
Mhm.
but yeah, I like the stepping stone idea too. It really does help them. Like, okay, it's not what is it called? It's not a it's not a sprint, it's a marathon or whatever the fuck.
Yes.
That yeah, that's a good analogy. I like that one.
Yeah. I know that there are some like types of team mentalities, culture where it's like,
Mhm.
you have to be robotic. And like,
Yeah.
while that is great for some people, and, especially if you are someone that like has the, I don't want to say luxury, but you've created a life where you can just kind of be robotic with like your bodybuilding meals and stuff like that. I think that's great. But more often than not, since a lot of women are starting to want to become bodybuilders and compete in like bikini or wellness or whatever, like there is that time and that place to show empathy. But again, empathy cannot be, replacing the idea of making progress. And so there is a fine line, especially as female coaches, where we have to like be careful to not, I don't want to say overstep, because it's not an overstepping issue, but we can't be emotional with our check-ins, right? Because if we show our athletes that we are being emotional because we're frustrated with them, I think that's where we lose our power dynamic. But if we show empathy and we show relatability with like how maybe we handled, you know, the same circumstance in our own lives, that shows that relatability and they gain that trust. But I think we lose our upper hand when we start to get emotional because the athlete is emotional, because then it's like we're both out of control, versus if we're able to like take a deep breath, keep our cool, and still guide them and take our emotions out of it and still be a coach, that's like, going to be the best thing at the end of the day for the coach client relationship when working with a female coach.
Yeah. I
I think
agree.
too that it should always be about the athlete. Granted, I'm sure there's lots of levels you can resonate with, but you don't want it to turn into a conversation being about yourself. I always make sure to steer away from getting too personal with information because it's not about me, it's about them.
I think that's fair. I personally like to show like relatability in terms of like how I relate to an athlete. So if it's like an athlete with an eating disorder, I'll be like, listen, I hear you. I went through this experience too. This is how I handled it. Maybe this is something that you could try. Or maybe it's like giving them different ideas. It's not necessarily like making it about me. It's showing that I'm human and I've struggled too. Because especially when you're working with a coach, like a lot of the times athletes view you as almost like celebrities, like where it's like, oh my gosh, they're this person, I respect, I look up to. And that can be really, really great when it comes to that level of respect within the coach client dynamic. But at the same time, it's like when they are kind of like in the thick of it and they're able to like have that like authoritative figure being like, hey, you know what, I struggle too. That can make them just feel heard. And therefore it's like, oh, well, if they struggle too, but yet look where they're at. Like I can struggle just as much, but still make progress and still get to them. It's not the idea of being perfect because perfection is what like gets results. It's just that like overall consistency. That's just personally like how I kind of do things.
Yeah. And I've noticed actually, um, kind of taking this to like a social media approach, but I've been more open, more vulnerable on social media, and a lot of my athletes follow me on there, and I've gotten just messages out of the blue saying like, thank you for being human, for showing that you have struggles too, and that it doesn't throw you off. Like, obviously, I'm still progressing because that's really important to me, is to hold my structure, and stay accountable and take care of myself. But that doesn't say that like I'm perfect. Like, I still struggle, and I make sure that they know that they're not alone. But yeah, we don't want to make it about ourselves because it is their journey. But I think that relatability aspect, it does help them feel heard and seen, you know? So I like that.
Mhm. Agreed. But then with that like same note, it's like again, as female coaches, we have to kind of like straddle that line between like our emotions, showing empathy versus like still being a coach where you
Mhm.
are looking at the athlete's like, entire journey. Because again, as the coach, you are guiding them through their different phases, fat loss phases, holding phases, health phases, just habit phases, like whatever you want to call them. So it's making sure that like you aren't so invested emotionally into the athlete where like you start to kind of bleed and blur the lines between like being their coach and being their best friend. Because like especially if it's a contest prep athlete and like they're in the thick of it and you're like having to cut their food, and let's say they're really having to dig and it's like you're getting less than 1,200 calories. It's like, will you make the right decision because you know how much this is going to suck, right? Versus like still understanding like, listen, you're paying me for a service. This is what we're going to need to do for the next, X amount of weeks. Let's dig deep here. We're going to cut through like the crap and we're really going to push here. So that's another thing that, coaches in general have to take into consideration, but especially females when it comes to being relatable, being a coach, being empathetic, and then controlling our own like thoughts and emotions. Because we know women are like, we're crazy, right? Like we have like so many million thoughts and ideas every single second. And like, God bless my husband, he'll just be like, potato, and I'm like thinking about like all the different ways to like French fries, casserole, hash browns, like all of these different things, like, and potato. And it's like, there's that aspect too when it comes to males and male coaching.
Yeah, definitely. But I also think like with males, and I absolutely love this like movement that I'm seeing in the bodybuilding space. I feel like a lot of more up and, or not up and coming, but more renowned like male coaches are stressing the importance of mental health
Mm,
with male athletes. And I think that is honestly beautiful, because I think that's a missing part in a lot of bodybuilders' journeys, is the mental aspect of it. And I think encouraging our male clientele. I know we all work with males in some capacity. We have a couple on each of our teams, is, you know, telling them like it's okay for you to struggle and to be open and vulnerable as well. I think that's a really good movement that we're seeing in the bodybuilding space too. It's
Mhm.
just being okay up here.
Yeah, I actually have a male athlete in particular where I took not the bitchy route because I didn't make it
Mhm.
personal about me, but I was hard on him in the way that I wanted my male coach to be hard on me when I was like screwing up. And he told me straight up, he's like, you're not going to get the response you want if you continue to like speak to me this way, just because like I don't find it empowering. I find it to be discouraging. So for me, that was actually really good feedback because not all men want
Yeah,
that like vigilant type of
100%.
thing. Like some men are like, listen, like I'll do what needs to be done, but I don't want the negative I forget like what type of like psychological word phrasing it is, but like the negative reinforcement I think like doesn't work for him. So
Yeah.
he's like, if you show me what I'm doing well and like you do side by side comparisons or whatever, you will get a much better response out of me. And that was like a huge aha moment because and I've seen and listened to podcasts where it's like some male coaches with their male athletes will just be like, hey, you're fucking up, dude, stop it. And I was like, oh, maybe I can try that as a female coach. Did not work for me with this athlete. And I was like, okay, good to
That's
know.
great that they communicated that though, as opposed to
Yeah.
just like ghosting on you.
Yeah.
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 So that, like I said, that it goes on the athlete's end too, knowing their communication style and what they need, which that is a lot of the times coaches and athletes can butt heads is if the coach doesn't know how to talk to the athlete and the athlete doesn't know their communication style or communication needs when it comes to getting the ball rolling on like progress and stuff.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And
I
I
think,
think,
sorry,
sorry,
go ahead.
that's really important, Ash, is opening up that communication. I personally don't have it like in my weekly check-in form, but I do like quarterly reviews with my athletes. And I'm like, okay, what did you like about this experience so far? What did you dislike? What do you need more from me as an athlete? What do you need less? Like, what do you not want me to do? I want them to be very open and honest about it. Um, so I think that's something that more coaches should do too, is asking their feedback.
Yeah.
Because like you probably have to change up your coaching style with a few athletes. And I feel like some coaches, they don't want to. It's like my way or the highway kind of thing. And
Mm-hmm.
you're not going to keep really good athletes. You're not going to keep that client retention. And that is what creates a good, solid coaching business. It's not the number of athletes you have, it's the retention rate and the impact that you make on those athletes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What were you gonna say, Laura? Totally cut you off.
Knowing where they're coming from too, to kind of have an idea of like, if someone's coming from a significantly traumatizing experience or doesn't handle trauma well or whatever the case may be, knowing you may need to be a little bit softer. I don't really love that term, but like, yeah, uh, to your approach with them, even if it's temporary,
Mhm.
might be needed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah. I
definitely.
think as coaches, and this could be something you guys can feel free to disagree on, it's not our job to punish athletes. Because again, I've heard athletes come to me being like, when the scale goes up, I am punished, even though I'm following the plan. And like
That's
to me, it's almost like a 404 error. You're like having to think you're following the plan, you're gaining weight. So in my mind, okay, we're in a growth phase, we're in a improvement season, we're adding muscle, but the response from your coach is punishment and they get a food cut or they get a cardio increase. And I'm like, it's not my job as a coach to punish you, especially in our field. Let's be honest, we work with a lot of type A people. They self-punish, self-sabotage up here plenty, right? And I'm one of those. I'm in that group where it's like I don't need someone to be like, hey, you're screwing up, whatever. Like I can do that plenty of damage up here, but it's not our job as coaches to punish. It's our job as coaches to lead. It's to lead the athlete to success, to work together as a team. And you have to know the athlete, which is why, like Meg, it's like, what more do you need from me as a coach this week? And some athletes are like, hey, can you check in with me? I know my check-in's on a Wednesday, but can you just send me an email on even if it's a Saturday, right? They're not to their check-in day. you know, I'm just feeling kind of stressed out. Just knowing that you give a crap about me will just make me feel better. That is a simple freaking request on my end, to just send an athlete an email on Saturday being like, hey, how are things going? What's up? Tell me something good. Like the amount of response and retention I've gotten from that question alone in their weekly check-ins has made my athletes trust me more and me to trust them more as well with how they're communicating, which is why the retention is there, which is why we're working together as a team and making forward strides. So like Meg said, it's not about just getting the inquiries in and just getting people for a month or two. It's, well, how many, like 6 months or a year or several years? Like I have athletes I've worked with ever since I started my own coaching business. And I have athletes that I worked with at a different coaching company eons ago that have seen my growth and seen how I changed as a coach that are now coming back. And I think that speaks volumes when it comes to, you know, evolving as a coach, and especially evolving as a female coach, knowing how male dominant this industry is, especially in competitive bodybuilding.
I agree. Yeah, I like that a lot. But oh, there was something else I was gonna say. I'm having a blank. I need my post-workout meal. Trying to think. Hold up.
Girl, are you, do you
Going
not,
hypo on us?
are you on
I might go
hypo?
hypo. I might go hypo. I need my food. But oh shit, man. There's something else. It was something about, oh, like the whole like punishment thing.
Oh,
And I think
punishment.
that's what a lot of people have like a negative view of like tracking things because
Mhm.
of that. And especially like the weight, the scale,
Yep.
a lot of people struggle with the scale. It's a normal thing to struggle with
Mhm.
because we just see it as black and white. Like it goes up, that's bad. It goes down, that's good. If you're, if you're in a fat loss phase or something, for an example. But you have to like open up that communication, like, okay, it went up, but you're stressed as shit.
Mhm.
Maybe you didn't shit that morning. Like maybe like all these factors, like we have to be open with our people. Like we can't just say, like, oh, the scale went up, you cheated on your diet, you messed up, it's on you. Like,
Mhm.
okay, maybe it was just like, it fluctuates.
Yeah.
Progress is not linear. And I think
Mhm.
if the athlete understands that, then they're going to be willing to, put in work for the long run. They're not going to want to like give up that easily.
Yeah.
But punishing, that's like it. When
I
I
am
hear that, I'm like, ugh,
I'm
like what?
glad you brought up that point, because that actually just like triggered a memory for me with a coach that I worked with. It was with blood glucose. I was doing
Oh, man, that's a
everything
good
to
one.
the T,
Mhm.
everything to the T, like trying my best to manage my stress. And like in reality, looking back on that time, like the reason why my fasting blood glucose was high, yeah, I probably was a little bit stressed because like I would be threatened with, you're not going to
Yeah.
get training, or you'll like whatever, like get reprimanded, get punished, whatever. That would be the feedback. But
Mhm.
for me, looking back on it, the reason why my fasting blood glucose was high, yeah, stress, but I looked at my body composition. Y'all, I was just fat. I was fatter than I needed to be. And like, newsflash, if you're fatter than you need to be, your fasting blood glucose is going to be a little bit higher, because you're going to have that, just like that insulin sensitivity isn't going to be there. And, you know, looking back on it, like now I take my fasting blood glucose, and every once in a while, if it's like before we need to deploy insulin, I'm like getting a little anxious about it. I'm like, holy shit, my coach is going to punish me. And then I'm met with, you're not going to get punished. You're just going to get insulin, because like we're at the point now in our programming, carbs are higher. We need a little bit help. That pancreas is struggling. Let's just put in some insulin for our growth phase. And it's like the difference in coaching dynamics, even that I have now with, again, just a male coach, night and day when it comes to that empathy and seeing the whole picture. So Meg, I'm glad you said that, because that for me was like, it wasn't the scale, it was blood glucose.
No, that's a big one though.
Yeah.
I think, and oh, I can't remember who said this, but with blood glucose, I honestly, if I find that they're like literally stressed over the number, I'm like, cut that
Pull,
shit.
pull it.
Cut
Yep.
it. We'll check labs. We'll look at insulin and HbA1c, your fasting blood sugar, then it's probably going to be fine.
Uh-huh.
But people get so caught up in this little glucometer. They let
Yeah.
that thing like freaking dictate their mood. And I'm like,
Mhm.
cut it. Like,
I do that on
stop.
any type of biofeedback that they get too
Yeah.
obsessed with.
Yep.
scales. Okay, you want to do measurements? Great. If not, send me your pictures. Great. I'll put them in
Exactly.
the pick stitch. Like,
It's the number thing. And I
Yeah.
think that goes in like the functional space too. Like you have all these optimal ranges for blood work. And if
Yeah.
you're not point whatever, like right there on the dot, it's shit. We
Yeah.
have to pull your training. We have to put you in a flush. We have to put you here. We have to do this, that, and this. It's like, fucking chill. You're
yeah.
not a robot.
Yeah.
Like, it's okay to have like a little bit, a little higher, a little lower. Like, it's fine. I feel like we get tied to numbers too
Mhm.
much. It's gross. But what, Laura? I get a
No,
little
I was just thinking about how you said that because like I'm kind of going through that now with all
yeah.
the different gut supplements and when to take this and when to do that and this should be this, and it does almost start to become more stressful than not doing them at all and taking time to just pull back everything. So that's, I'm having a little bit of confrontation with that internally as to how necessary the application is as opposed to solely focusing on habits.
Mhm.
That's smart. Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
And I think it was actually on Justin Mahaley's podcast. He was talking to Corey Fit. I don't know her last name, Corey Fit.
He works for Jewett, right?
I don't know. Sure. Yeah. TV girl. I don't know. But they were talking about how a lot of coaches in the functional space are capitalizing on this vulnerability of
Mm.
these people coming to them in the shit of it. And they are capitalizing on it. And I think that's really important too, to recognize. And, we can't take, it's just gross. Some things in the coaching industry, man. Like, it creates more, I don't know, just more stress in our athletes if we don't just like meet them where they're at and like understand, but also be able to like push them when they need to. But I think it's the communication thing that we're lacking in some coaches.
Mhm. Yeah, I would agree. And kind of like circling back to everything, it's like
Mhm.
you don't need to hire a coach that's just going to be like, good job, girlie, you're crushing it if you're not crushing it. Like, you want to work with someone, again, because you're paying them, you're paying for a service at the end of the day. You want to make sure that that person is meeting you where you're at and helping you to get to where you want to be, and
Mhm.
having like realistic and difficult conversations. Not everything's going to be like rainbows and sunshine. And that goes the same with all of us and all the coaches that we have worked with or are currently working with. Like, if I'm having a hard week, like, Austin would be like, hey, now's not the time to push, right? Because I'm the person that's like, yo, I'm fine, like I'm struggling or whatever. Let's just fucking go. Let's push. He'll be like, no, now's not the time to push. Or if I'm like being super emotional about something, he'll be like, you're a mature athlete. You need to act like one. It's like he knows what to say when I need to hear it. And that's something that I know all of us are really good at when it comes to just like seeing the athlete, knowing what they've been through and being like, hey, like this was a hard week. We had some hiccups. Let's acknowledge it, let's own it, let's make a game plan for them to not happen again. Or at least if they do pop up, we know how to adapt to the situation and still check our boxes as an athlete. So that way, again, they are making progress and progression. So that way we are coaching them to success, whether it's functional health, contest prep, or even just jump hop.
Yeah. And that's a good point to show that, coaches need coaches. Because
Yes, dude.
if Cameron didn't put me in my place sometimes, like
Mhm.
I'm a little passive aggressive in my approach sometimes, and I'll just like his messages, and I'm like, nah, fuck
Double
him.
tap.
But I know he has my best interest in heart.
Yep.
But yeah, but I know like I'm probably a bitch to work with, but coaches need coaches. But
Mhm.
I think as coaches, we need to be, you know, good good coaches. We have to be able to change the way that we coach for the individual.
Yeah, we have to lead. That's
Lead.
that's
Yeah.
literally we lead by example, because like if I'm fucking off, one, Austin's gonna know. And then if I like say something or do a post talking about like something my athletes should be doing and I'm not doing it,
Mhm.
bro, I feel like Austin would fly or drive down here and like whoop me with like a battering ram. Any
But
final thoughts, ladies?
ah,
Crushed it.
yeah.
I thought you said fresh tit, and I was like,
Fresh.
Like,
See, there you go. There's the tit
there's the
talk
tit.
today.
There's the tit. I was like, why is she saying fresh tit? But I was like, okay, I'm gonna roll with it. She's warm and cuddly, whatever. Fresh tit it is.
But I guess my final thought is for the female coaches. Don't be scared to put your foot down.
Mm,
It's not going to make you a bitch. You know, it's okay to be stern in your responses sometimes, but also don't turn into this militant style coaching. You still do need that empathetic side because we are all human at the end of the day, but we can't treat everybody as like, soft and like a participation trophy. Like these people come to you to change their lives. So you better push them in a way to get there. So,
mhm.
Great.
yeah.
Good thoughts. Snaps and claps. Laura, any
Yeah.
fresh tits? Any final thoughts?
That's it. That's all we got for today.
Food
Love it.
time.